Before we talk about the ESPN layoffs that are set to occur at the end of the month, we also need to be bringing something up in this video that I don't think anybody was paying attention to. So make sure you guys stick around for the full video. Well, gang, now it is official. ESPN will, in fact, be laying off a lot of people. However, there is a much, much larger story and a much, much larger context behind what I'm about to reveal. Now, guys, this video is going to have a few updates in it towards the end, but it's mostly about Friday's schedule and the reason why that is the case of how I'm going to be doing things. Now, gang, really quick, this video right here will be out on Friday. Obviously, I am doing this video here on Thursday. But we do need to talk about these ESPN layoffs because it is actually quite important when you actually get to the overall meat of what's actually going on here. Now, with that right there being said, let's go ahead and dive into this. So, a while back, I did a video talking about ESPN's expected layoffs, roughly right around 7,000 employees. Well, Disney had announced that they were going to try to separate ESPN, and of course, they eventually did that. Now, the biggest reason why I'm bringing this up is because in yesterday's video, which by the way comes out today, I talked about how ESPN was upset with Stephen A. Smith over a sit-down that he had with Clay Travis. Now, my assessment in that situation was that if Stephen A. Smith wanted to leave his contract, which by the way does not end until after 2024, he could in fact do so. And of course, he may even desire that, especially given the fact that Stephen A. Smith, slowly but surely, has kind of sort of been revealing himself to not be a part of the agenda. We'll get to that here soon. Now, I have known this for a long time about Stephen A. Smith, that Stephen A. Smith was nowhere near the amount of woke that he portrays on Woke Take. I mean, for the most part, it's just about everybody else who's really and truly woke, whether it be Jalen Rose or Max Kellerman, who, by the way, is no longer there. Marcus Spears, I've not called it, not yet, except a few instances. Kendrick Perkins, of course, we all remember the whole statement where he said that most MVP voters in the NBA were white, even though the fact that he was wrong about that, and the fact that the NBA ever since 1983 has, for the most part, chosen black players to be their MVP, which of course is standard given the fact that the NBA is mostly black. No big deal there. Nothing to get upset about that. Of course, you have the likes of Michael Jordan. You had Magic Johnson there. You had who else? You have had LeBron. You've had several great basketball players, and of course, they got the MVP award correctly in those years. But obviously, ESPN has been going out of their way to go into this whole woke progressive agenda. Now, Disney, of course, has separated from ESPN, or they've had ESPN separate from them. Now, I got to wonder, and I know I'm talking a little fast here, but I've got to honestly wonder, why in the world would ESPN be in such bad condition outside of their woke agenda? Well, it was discussed on the New York Post, at least their sports channel that they have here on YouTube. Now, guys, I'm going to roll the first half of this. We're going to come back to the second half, and we're going to talk about the mid-level employees and the low-level employees who will more than likely lose their job. And then I'm going to play for you guys the second half, which, of course, is going to be just as important as the first. But there's a little wrinkle here that a lot of people are not catching, and I'll be discussing that towards the end of the video. With that there being said, let's go ahead and roll this first part.
There were going to be cuts coming across Disney, which would include ESPN. Just earlier this week, you had a story, Andrew, where you put a few more specifics around those cuts that are coming. Tell us what you've found out.
I think the middle class is the ones that are probably going to get hit the hardest. So if you're a Sports Center anchor making $600,000 or more per year, and you're not Scott Van Pelt, you're not necessarily moving the needle, I think those are people that probably have some concern. I also was told there's not going to be any sacred cows. They'll look at they're looking at everybody. People who lead each department, from the ESPN chairman, Jimmy Pitaro, is defined as much efficiency in their divisions. And so I don't think there's a number, at least at this point, that they have to hit, or a number of people.
This right here sounds about accurate when you actually think about it. But like I said, there is another wrinkle that we'll get to here in a second. Now, let me go ahead and say this really quick. How many personalities at ESPN right now would be quote-unquote mid-level personalities versus how many people are they trying to actually promote? Let's take a look at this. Mina Kimes is someone that they're openly trying to promote. Don't get me started on her. Marcus Spears is somebody that they've had around for a while, ex-NFL football player. I'm not going to doubt his overall football acumen, but I do think his takes from time to time have been, let's just say, a little bit a little bit lacking in desire. Damian Woody is somebody that they've had on for a while. I personally like Damian Woody, but then again, at the same time, though, you got to wonder exactly why it's. I'll put it this way here. You got to wonder if someone like, say, Damian Woody could make it on his own. Rex Ryan, of course, he's been around. He's probably, he could very, very well be laid off. By the way, Woody and Spears are both obviously black. So you probably would think with their woke agenda, they might not lay them off. I'm not trying to make any serious comparisons or anything here, not trying to get tribal or anything. Please don't take it that way. Woody and Spears, of course, could probably stay on. But then again, at the same time, though, I also think that those two could possibly start their own podcast someday, and you might find out some very important things. Let's say Teddy Bruschi, for example. Teddy Bruschi's been with the network for a while. He could find himself getting laid off. He's not been around as much. Whereas someone like, say, Greenberg, for example, he's going to be okay. Say for Rex Ryan, I'm not so sure. A lot of these people, quite frankly, are probably going to be in the crosshairs, where obviously someone like Adam Schefter is not going to be. Even though you guys can obviously see recently with the amount of crap that Adam Schefter has gotten wrong, that ESPN may very, very well be going in the direction more of entertainment than anything else, which, by the way, makes me believe that sports as a whole is now officially entertainment. We may do some videos on that at a later date, especially seeing how we're probably going to do more sports takes. Yes, my chair still creaks. I've been trying to fix that for a while, and obviously it has not been done. I apologize for that. But the fact of the matter is that mid-level employees are probably going to be let go as well as low-level employees. I remember Katie Nolan, she was let go of, I think, a year ago, but obviously ESPN is going to go out of their way to promote certain people. Now, in this next part, you're going to hear exactly the type of hole that ESPN put themselves in with certain contracts. Don't worry, we'll get to that here in a second. But let's look at the names that ESPN has signed recently. Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, a lot of money. And, of course, they've got this little issue with the NBA. So right now, ESPN may have actually outstretched their resources.
The Schefters, the Wojs, they're not going to be impacted by this. It's that middle class. And I do think there's a lot of management that they're looking at in terms of executives, and they're thinning it out. What's changing about ESPN under Bob Iger and the way the new structure is that their financials are going to be just laid out to the public in November. I think they're going to be very good. And from what I understand, I think they might surprise people how good they are. Obviously, they're making less money than they once were, but still, I think they're making tons and tons of money, which makes this even more disheartening because I think ESPN is still making a lot of money.
There are several areas to look at. First of all, like, we don't know the timing of when this is coming out. We don't know how many people.
Well, probably end of April. I would say
it's within a month or two. I think
on Saturday, I can understand his thinking. Now, I think Joe Buck was in a unique circumstance. They had a unique problem that Buck solved, and I mean, they paid him a crazy number. He made a lot at Fox. $9-10 million. They went to 15. So Fowler doesn't have that leverage, and they have other people. They have Reese Davis. They have Sean McDonough. Bob Wischusen. They could look outside as well if they wanted to replace Fowler. So it's not a great leverage point. I do think they want to keep him, but I don't think it's definite what's going to happen there.
And I also want to make one other quick point about this. I write every single day about the regional sports networks and the problems that they're having. Disney, ESPN is within the same sort of media environment. But from everything that I've heard, these cuts, they're Disney-wide cuts, and they're coming after Disney spent so much money on their streaming service, on Disney Plus, on ESPN Plus, Hulu. We've talked a lot about how Wall Street wanted companies like Disney to get as many subscribers as they can. And then in one quarter, they stopped and said, forget about the subscribers. We want profits. I think that what we're about to see happen at ESPN is, and all of Disney, is a function of that, more so than cord cutting or rebundling or any kind of like inherent.
Now, gang, you obviously heard a couple of very important names there, Buck and Aikman. Now, let me say something right quick. This player is going to get me in trouble with a lot of people, especially fellow Packer fans. Most of us do not care for Buck and Aikman. For whatever reason, I don't understand why. But then again, at the same time, I also remember when Monday Night Football had, who was it, Booger McFarland up there. They had Jason Witten up there one year, and many people complained about them. Now, it's possible that maybe ESPN did that because someone like, say, Tony Romo, who I was never a fan of when he was a quarterback, but have actually become very much a fan of as a commentator, it is very possible that what might have happened is that ESPN saw that CBS, of course, had a much, much more stable flow of viewers, or they were getting it now that Romo was there. Now, there are some commentators that CBS has and NBC has that I don't really like. Now, me personally, I've always had a thing for, I've always liked Al Michaels. I actually like Mike Tirico, too. I think that NBC is actually doing it the right way, at least as far as their commentary crews are concerned. At one point in time, they even had, I think it was, Hines Ward was even doing sideline reporting to go along with Rodney Harrison, a bunch of old names. The fact of the matter is that normally what happens is that players and other commentators, they eventually get famous over time. I probably didn't say that earlier, but someone like, say, someone like Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, they're more than likely going to command a lot of money because of the amount of work they did at Fox, how famous they are. Joe Buck still commentates World Series games. So obviously you're going to be paying these guys a lot of money. However, did they really and truly need that big of a boost? Now, I understand that their ratings were bad, but let's be honest about something. Sports is something that even with wokeness and crap can still recover someday. After a while, when you stop the political nonsense, guess what happens? Fans eventually take notice and they eventually come back. I don't think that ESPN needed to overstretch themselves when it came to overall commentary. I don't think they needed to hire Buck and Aikman. I'm pretty sure at some point in time they could have found a formula that works. Then again, though, you also have people like Hasselback, for example, who wasn't liked either. Trent Dilfer was there at one point in time. I guess they booted him out the door. All ESPN had to do was actually look from within and hire talent that was not solely woke. But, of course, they kind of screwed the pooch on that. However, here's the wrinkle that I wanted to mention because obviously you're probably already thought this and you're thinking, when the hell are you going to get to this point? And this was going to be the last point that I make. Do you guys remember when Disney got political in Florida over the whole Parental Rights Act? Do you guys remember that? A lot of people began boycotting Disney. And one of the ways they were boycotting Disney was they were simply unsubscribing from Disney+. Well, Verizon, which, by the way, is also, well, I shouldn't, the only time I'm going to reveal they're my carrier at this moment in time. Verizon had a package at one time where you could get Hulu, Disney+, and ESPN, I think for $12.99, maybe $11.99, I'm not entirely sure. Well, the thing you have to understand is that a lot of people were pulling the plug on those three networks at a protest of Disney. Now, it obviously put a dent in them because eventually the CEO, Bob Chapek, he was eventually replaced. They ended up putting the old woke CEO back in there to try to get things going, and now they have a money man who looks like he's going to take over. But the thing is this right here. When people started pulling the plug on Disney, it obviously hurt ESPN. This is the main reason why Disney said, you know what, man, we need to just go ahead and separate ESPN altogether. Now, if it were me, if I was ESPN at this moment in time, I would go ahead and expect to, let's just say, lose a lot. Now, am I saying that ESPN should give up something like, say, the NBA or cut bait with some of their stars? No, I'm not saying that at all. However, they are going to need to go through some cuts, and they may want to rebrand themselves and try to rebuild their brand before eventually they have no brand. Fact of the matter is that ESPN did it to themselves, and you could only wonder why, and don't worry, I'll close on that. But guys, let me go ahead and end this video with a couple of updates. This video right here will be out first. There's going to be a video on the situation in Chicago with the woke mayor, and of course, the part 1 to the gun control series that I'm working on, we're pushing that back to Saturday. It's probably going to have 2 videos. There's even going to be a video on short time of prepping, a much, much longer response to what's going on overseas. And on Sunday, we look to have part 2. Basically, what we got to do is we got to push things back. And one more thing, too. There was this recent thing going on here with Matt Walsh being demonetized here on YouTube. That's a much, much bigger talking point. So that video will be out tomorrow. I originally did not want to do 3 videos for Friday, but here we are. Guys, John Claymore, if you guys like this content, please hit the like button, subscribe. Share the video, sign up in the comment section. I'd love to get you guys' thoughts on this. Let me go ahead and leave you with this right here, because this right here is the real reason why ESPN.
Supremacy, slave trade, because you're white.
Racial discrimination, African Americans, black women.
White privilege. White privilege. White privilege. White people should feel a certain amount of guilt.
Black men, white analysts, black dude, racist, white dude. I am a black man. My blackness, a lot of racists out there.
Racist, 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 racist.
Black guy versus a white guy.
Racist,
Race riots.
White privilege.
black players.
Colorism, fairer skin, racism, racism, black man, white people, a black young man, white guys, black man, white girl, black people.
We don't know, but we do know this. Since you do want to bring it up, we do know this, that when it comes to MVP voting, 80% of the voters are white American. 20% are other.
The next day.
I want to correct something here from yesterday's show. When Kendrick Perkins said 80% of NBA voters for the MVP award are white. The NBA publicly announces the voters each year, and after review, it is clear the panel is much more diverse than what was portrayed.